Hi, I'm Lindsay Bodner, and this is The Intentional Jewish Family. Today I want to talk about a difficult topic, but I feel that we can't address education or personal finance, goal setting, or anything else until we talk about this giant gray cloud of grief that's over all of our heads. As you and I probably know too well, Jews around the world are suffering in the aftermath of October 7th. It's absolutely no surprise that everything we're going through has negatively impacted our family ecosystems. So this is what I want to talk about today. And while only Hashem can perform miracles, and I hope he does, otherwise there really is no panacea. However, I hope that the Intentional Jewish Family will be an opportunity for some of us to take back a measure of control and to create something positive and enduring in this time of darkness. Before we delve into the trauma experienced by families in the United States, where most of the audience of the Intentional Jewish Family resides, and I really want to talk about how to address it, I've given it a lot of thought, we have to acknowledge the stark reality in Israel. We all know that whole families were murdered on October 7th, and many, many more were left mourning loved ones, and everyone is mourning their sense of security. Thousands are still displaced, and inexplicably, hostages still remain in Gaza. I'm sure their families are in a state of constant and dreadful anguish, and all Israeli families have been under relentless physical attack, also while being gaslit by the international community. Our soldiers, husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, sons, and daughters bravely serve in the IDF. They're facing risk of permanent injury and death. So juxtaposed with what families are going through in Israel, talking about what American families are going through might seem a bit thin-skinned, but we need to. Recognizing the hierarchy of pain can't preclude us from examining and tending to our own wounds, making sure that we're healthy. In the United States, families have been negatively impacted in many different ways. I wrote an al-Chet for parents and partners that goes something like this. We have been lost in our own sadness. We have doom-scrolled rather than looking in our children's eyes. We have read the news rather than to our children. We have disconnected from our spouses, each of us retreating into our own solitary grief. We've picked fights with our children because we're scared that they don't think like us. We've listened to the news and podcasts with gruesome details while surely little ears were listening too. We have answered questions that have no answers. We have worried, constantly and justifiably, about the future and darkened the mood of our homes. We have spoken disparagingly about people and lost some of our own humanity. We have been too hard on ourselves in this time of collective grief. We have given ourselves too much grace when we needed to be more present. So 6 months in, and I think that many adults I know spend significant parts of their days davening for the hostages, anxiously monitoring the news, and sparring with people on and offline. Anti-Semitism, the disregard for Jewish lives and inclusion, and pro-Hamas support by visible and influential subsections of the population have shaken even the most phlegmatic of us. With the changing landscape and our fickle friends, many of us have had to realign our ideological commitments. And although intra-community relationships are stronger than ever in some ways, we can also see them starting to fray. I think that it can be profoundly lonely to walk among our neighbors, our colleagues, and people on the street with the new and warranted weariness, because the data set sadly bears it out. A striking percentage of them would prefer that we Jews weren't here, or there, or anywhere. So for those of us with young children, it would be naive to think that interacting for months with this cloud over our heads hasn't impacted our families. Of course, it may show up in behavior or delays or in other ways, but surely it's impacting our kids. For those of us with older kids, we know it. We can't help but see the impact on them and the questions they ask, and they're in the throes of their own process of realignment. How they think, how they post, how they walk in the world is also changing. So I have to ask, what kind of a conversation about families would be helpful now, when we're still reeling from grief and dismay? I'm starting the Intentional Jewish Family precisely now with the intent of reawakening people's parenting instincts and our own natural inclination. I think that we have an inclination to focus inward on families in times of challenge. It's good and it's natural. The Intentional Jewish Family is a conversation. It's kind of a lofty goal, but it's about generational family goals and building a present life that will lead us to those goals. But how do we get there? Especially now, in this time of trauma, is it even possible? Our capacities for long-term planning are understandably diminished. So I want to take a look at the Al-Chetz a little bit more closely and assess how we can move ourselves and our families to a better place. So, number one, take care of your mental health. It's been said, but it bears repeating. We've all been lost in our own sadness, but on an individual level, we need to assess whether that sadness has metastasized. And if our mental health is suffering, 6 months in, it's time to get help. NIH research shows that most depressive episodes are triggered by grief or by situations that cause ongoing anxiety. So I think it's utterly unsurprising that so many Jews right now need mental health support. Fortunately, I think the stigma around working on mental health is lower than it's ever been, and there are discrete options for therapy and medication. If you're depressed, you need to get help. You can start by untangling yourself from commitments that are weighing you down and get into therapy. With a good therapist, I'll say. The therapist-patient relationship is so important, and there are different kinds of therapy and different kinds of therapists. Some people prefer a therapist that will challenge them a little bit more. Others prefer a therapist that's a bit more supportive or will look more to the past to try to figure out the origins of whatever is going on. There's also CBT, so lots of different kinds of therapy, and if you don't like either the therapist or the kind of therapy that you're doing, find something else, find something that does work. And I want to also mention that exercise and eating well and prioritizing sleep are extremely important. And I know the list sounds a little bit trite, but that's often where we're deficient. Next, be present. If you've struggled to be present, you're not alone. But so many months in, it's time to start changing that. We have to set ourselves up for success and put mechanisms into place. You can put your phone in a different room or install software. If you can't leave your phone, you have to install software that will prevent you from looking at social media. And also, if we're being present with our kids or our spouses, plan an activity that demands physical participation and shared presence. So it's both things, the physical participation and the shared presence. So for example, cooking a meal together, playing catch, even a game of chess is somewhat physical. You could also go for a walk or a hike. You know best what your family will respond to, but the key is to be engaged in the same activity. So it's not like you wash dishes while they snack. The active pursuits minimize distractions, but even if your mind does occasionally wander, at the end of the day you'll have completed an activity, having spent positive time with your family. Build on it and aim to incorporate short, engaging activities into your day or your week. So it depends how disengaged you've been. If you're not doing much of anything in terms of activities, plan one per week. If you're doing it already a couple of times a week, try for every day. Next, speak thoughtfully. If you've been unkind or said things either to loved ones or about others that don't comport with your values, again, you're not alone, it's been a problem for me. Look back and think about how it happened. So what triggered that reaction? Was it situational? So for example, it was loud, it was hungry, everyone was hungry, your kids aren't listening, you're yelling. Or was it content related? Somebody asked you something that you struggled to think rationally about, Hamas or ceasefire or a particular politician. Or was it a combination of both, situation and content? So one technique that can help is to think about how you would like to respond to a similar situation or a similar question. If you think about in the future, don't just say I want to do better. Of course you want to do better. Get specific and script it out for yourself. Best case, keep the script short, but actually writing out a sentence, taking the time to write it, 1 or 2 sentences, will help you to organize your thoughts, and the preparation will do wonders. Now, bear with me another 15 seconds, but you close your eyes and imagine that stressful situation in detail, and then picture yourself reacting in the way that you want to. Next time, although the situation is unlikely to unfold exactly as you visualized it, you're so much more likely to react in a way that you'd be proud to do because you've practiced doing so in the past. Next, strengthen your close ties. Call a friend, make a date with your husband or wife. Don't wait. Now, this is a longer one. It's the second to last one, but I think it's extremely important to discuss. Deepen your connection with Israel. An existential crisis like October 7th and its aftermath has caused all thoughtful people to examine their relationships with Israel. We have to wonder, what does the Jewish state mean to me? What if, God forbid, it wasn't there? I know personally I feel both a yearning and a paralysis when it comes to Israel. I truly see Israel as a miracle of our time, a nest that generations before us prayed fervently for but could never really have imagined. Could have saved so many people's lives for generations and generations and generations. And I think that it would be crazy not to recognize that. On a practical level, in some ways, I'm so close with Israel. I have family there, friends, colleagues, and I speak to people in Israel daily. But I'm so acutely aware that I live in the diaspora. And my career, my life, my community, and even most of my cultural references, even the Jewish ones, are so rooted in the US. Maybe my family will make Aliyah one day. We've discussed it. But even if we do, if I'm honest, and I want to be honest, I can't really imagine feeling anything but like an outsider, like an immigrant. And for now, I'm not even that, right? When I go to Israel, I'm a tourist. Or maybe I'm a step up, I'm a visitor. I love Israel as a state and as the homeland of my people. However, no matter how deep my love, I'm not fighting and I'm not sacrificing. I'm not like my sisters-in-law, somehow managing their families alone while their husbands fight and protect all of us. I think what the Israeli community is giving right now, what they're enduring, it makes my heart ache and my stomach knot in what I can best identify as guilt. Honestly, it's mixed with gratitude, it's mixed with awe and love, but it's guilt. I keep thinking that they're there and they're fighting for both of us. They're doing the job that we both need them to do. So you may not feel exactly the same way I do, but I think that it's really healthy to experience a change in your relationship to the Jewish state after October 7th. I encourage you to examine your own feelings, but this is really important, without letting them pull you down. Without letting them pull you under, at least. And I think that one way to do that is through action. So using action rather than contemplation alone. There are some concrete actions that we can take to get closer to Israel right now. We can help by donating to Israel. There are so many wonderful initiatives. There are also scams, so be careful. I personally like the Jewish Funders Network vetted list. I'll post it below. It has a long list of places that you can donate to, just by category, so it's really great. We can also plan a trip to Israel, either an organized volunteer trip or a personal one. A lot of people I know talk about that. Maybe they had a trip planned already this summer, or they were thinking about going a couple of months ago. And you know, there's a little bit of an ambivalence, right? People are afraid, both for physical safety and I think even more so to experience even a deeper pain and grief by being present. But I really think that there's something to be said for running toward your feelings rather than running away from them. And so I think that a trip to Israel can be really meaningful right now. I also think that it's extremely important to call or email your representatives and make sure they're working to free the hostages. You can also buy something Israeli. So support your local Israeli coffee shop or someone who has been or could be impacted by the boycotts, and give them chizuk, strength. You can also do something, and I did this, you can buy and donate art that captures the beauty near Gaza. It's done by Bezalel Academy of Art and Design. It's called Wrapping Memory. It's local artists remembering their pre-October 7th kibbutzim and just the scenery around the Gaza border, which is incredibly beautiful. I want to talk about this a little bit more. I think this is a much bigger issue that I'd like to cover in a whole separate episode at some point. But I think it's also really important to learn Israeli history and Torah. There is a flourishing Torah culture and a complex history of Israel that we in the diaspora don't really know that much about. I really think that this is a project that our communities and schools need to reimagine, but we can start somewhere. We can listen to Unpacking Israeli History, for example, with Dr. Noam Weissman. We can also read modern and contemporary Israeli religious thinkers, both the scholars and the rabbis. Now, I'm by no means an expert in this area. I'm learning too, but you can email me for suggestions. I have some ideas. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we can daven. A friend of mine, Hannah Kapnick Ashar, mentioned or gave a suggestion several months ago that we could ask Hashem to take our grief and our tears and our anger, which sometimes feels bottomless, and ask Hashem to turn it into strength for those who really need it. I found that extremely meaningful, so I wanted to share and thought maybe that you could too. I want to also ask, how has your family been impacted by October 7th? Have any of these al-Khaits been particularly difficult for you? And are there any suggestions that I mentioned that you think could be helpful? So I'm really interested in your feedback. Please email me at theintentionaljewishfamily@gmail.com or leave a comment. And also, if you like this content, please go ahead and take a minute to hit like and subscribe below. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, maybe elsewhere. You can also find this script, or a version of this script, it's not exactly the same, on the Substack, which is theintentionaljewishfamily.substack.com. And it'll get sent to your inbox every week, and you can also take a look at the archives. I hope to continue learning with you.